Forgiveness is more than saying sorry. That's the title of this video today. Forgiveness is more than saying sorry. And I have to laugh because that song is from a movie called Just Friends. Maybe some of you have seen it. It stars Ryan Reynolds and it takes place during Christmas. And one of the characters, the pop singer character, I can't think of the actress's name now, Anne something. Anyway, it's hilarious. She sings this song called Forgiveness is More Than Saying Sorry. And even though the movie is very funny, it goes into this friendship that's going on between Ryan Reynolds and Amy Smart characters, and how Ryan Reynolds and Amy Smart, they have a long-term friendship since high school, and he wants more than that. Anyway, it's a very hilarious movie that actually has some great lessons in it that I think are very valuable along the lines of forgiveness. So it brings me to what I want to talk today about: why forgiveness is more than saying sorry. Why is forgiveness more than saying sorry? Saying sorry is definitely a great first step in any situation, whether it's to yourself or to others, or maybe even to God. I really don't think God needs us to say that we're sorry, because God knows our hearts. But I think saying sorry is a great first step. But why is forgiveness more than saying sorry? To me, I used to really have a hard time with forgiveness. And as you might know, I talk about miracles on this channel. And I have studied a spiritual text called A Course in Miracles for many years, which the main focus of A Course in Miracles is not dogma or doctrine. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. It's basically a mind training, spiritual mind training. And its main focus is forgiveness. Forgiveness in a much bigger sense than I ever thought was possible. Why is forgiveness so important? Well, forgiveness to me, I think the way I've understood forgiveness always had to do with what it seemed like absolving or overlooking the bad things that have seemed to happen either in the world or either in your life or maybe even yourself. I often felt like I had to forgive myself for mistakes that I made in the past, or forgive others, and it oftentimes felt like a strain to do that, even though, and I'm talking about the traditional meaning of forgiveness, which is something happened that was wrong, and I'm going to forgive it because that's what God wants me to do. That's what God wants me to do. That's what Jesus wants me to do. That's what I'm told to do. But it really is much. I've come to discover that forgiveness is much broader than that. It's much broader than that because I've come to understand, and A Course in Miracles teaches this, and I think the Bible goes into this to some extent, although the Bible has a lot of stories and characters that demonstrate forgiveness, like Joseph, for example. The story of Joseph, if you know anything about that story, you know how at the very end, when he comes back with his brothers who betrayed him so horribly, he demonstrates true forgiveness with them. But how do you get there? How do you get to true forgiveness in a world like this? Particularly if perhaps maybe you have done things that you are ashamed of, right? Maybe other people seem to have done things to you, or things have happened that still seem to hurt even after years. And you know that you may never get an apology. In fact, most likely, you'll never get an apology. So I've discovered that forgiving is a softening of the heart, and it's required seeing past what seems to have happened. Seeing that this world was, at least the way it has been for a long time, has been set up to really not be of God. A world that has been made around hatred and death and some really seemingly terrible, horrific things that have seemed to go on. And when I realized that I don't feel that God had anything to do with those terrible things, that God would make a world like that. I do feel that God has used what was made to me by our own minds, because he gave us the power of his mind. And somehow, because by using that power, we made a world like this. But I feel that God knows that, and God will use all the things that we thought that we had made a world like this, for example, or how we have many times, some of us can feel a sense of deep guilt that we don't even understand why or where that comes from. Why do we feel so guilty inside or unworthy? And I know for me, I've experienced that that's just been a deep, deep sense of shame that I did something horribly wrong. But through my own studies, the studies through A Course in Miracles, and now more recently, I've been reading the Bible, I realized that God has a much bigger, broader view. And I realized that what A Course in Miracles makes reference to is the ego. Some would call that the devil or Satan. Some even call it error of thinking. But whatever that thinking is, that's not of God, that's not of love. God knows that it's not real. Not to say that the experiences that maybe you have had, or I have had, or others have had, or what seems to be going on in the world, not to say that the pain and suffering that has seemed to go on planet Earth isn't significant, isn't something that people have, that all of the brothers and sisters have faced in one form or another. Not to minimize that at all, but to God, love is what is real. Expressions of love and creations of love is really, truly what is real. And that's why we can begin to, at least for me anyway, I can begin to soften my heart. I can soften my heart toward myself, towards others, towards the world. And it does require a great deal of internal work. It requires 24/7 devotion to this way of thinking. That's why, for me, I've used something like A Course in Miracles, which is what has worked for me, to help me recover from this painful state of mind that seems to be a result of this world. However, it doesn't have to be that way. So getting back to forgiveness being more than saying sorry, to me that just means that it is a much deeper internal experience that has to do with being willing to recognize that there's a higher calling, a higher truth, that is of God's. And that when we hold forgiveness as a goal, so to speak, in front of everything. A spiritual teacher of mine said that placing forgiveness in front as the main goal of everything, meaning that you're willing to see through it. Like the Matrix, for example, you're seeing the false as false, recognizing God's truth and what this world has seemed to show us. If we're willing to do that, even for a moment, then we're on our way to forgiveness. We are on our way. And there's much more to this idea. But I wanted to share that today and remind you that saying sorry is a great first step along the path of opening our hearts and softening our hearts to the forgiveness and the love of God.